Da 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 da. What's my good chair? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. I had a couple of challenges. If you guys been hanging out with me for any length of time, you knew last month I had a problem with my fire alarm. It's been like beeping off consistently. I just grabbed a chair, got up there, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll pull some wires. And it's all wired. I'm not an electrician, and they just installed me a new one. So I'm going to apologize beforehand. We may be interrupted. I may be able to pop up once it's gone off a few times and just hit the button and it may go off. It does periodically go off by itself. But we'll deal with this tomorrow. This evening, I hope that you guys will just be, I don't know, tolerant. That would be nice, because I do know it's irritating, right? It is irritating for me. And I like the least amount of hiccups in my lives as I possibly can, but I understand things happen. And so we're going to work with it in the moment and we'll see how it goes. Hello, Tammy. How are you tonight? How are you tonight? You've been awfully quiet the past couple of days. I hope nothing is going on at home that's kind of no worries. Oh, no worries about the smoke alarm. Thank you. Actually, I'm just going to jump up for 1 minute and see if I can just grab a chair here before we start because it does go off periodically if I get up there and hit the button. So we'll just get up here and we'll give it. There we go. Let's hope that works. I'll leave the chair there just in case I have to do it again. It'll go off probably a couple of times before it'll finally shut off. Sometimes when I open up the window, it helps too. I don't know what's going on. It's brand new. They only put it in a month ago. Okay, you guys. I hope everybody has off to a good start on their week. We are already past, I guess, what they call hump day. We're going into the end of our week. And for myself, I've been trying to slow down this week. I really have. I'm not doing a very good job of it. I said yesterday, today I wasn't going to go out of the house at all. But I smell spring in the air. Things are starting to melt outside a little bit and I'm getting antsy for it. So I threw on my gum boots and I thought I'd go check out a thrift store, see if there was a little score for me. I picked up a cup of coffee, went to the grocery store, picked up a few groceries, came home, quickly ate, then washed my dishes, cleaned up, and the next thing you know, oh my goodness, my live show is going on in a few minutes. I'm just going to see if I just X this stuff out here that maybe that will help a little bit with the reflection. Whoopsie. I'm watching a little bit of Carl Young. He's a psychologist. He's passed now. He died in 1961, a few months before I was born in actuality. And I've never been interested in him. As long as I've been exploring the inside, his content has come across my path and it has been a little bit heavy and I didn't really get it. But over the course of the years, right, I get it. And as of recently, I would say in the past 5 or 6 months, I've been getting into him a lot more. I probably get a little bit of Carl Jung every single day. Very interesting character personally as well as professionally. And it's really neat the way that I can find resonance with people that are so different than I am. But then again, maybe he's not so different. Sometimes it's just in the way we present ourselves, right? And you never really truly know somebody until you can actually spend some personal time with them, right? And that's true. We all have that what is it, that character that we come. Even for myself, when I come into my lives, I try to be as genuine as I possibly can, but there are moments when I go, oh my goodness, the fire alarm. And then there's a new Cindy that kind of shows up, not in a multi personality kind of way, but a persona for the experiences that I'm having in the moment. And that's true. Like from day to day to day, depending on our experiences, our good experiences, our bad experiences, our sad experiences, lots of us, we've been brought up, right? We've been kind of trained not to cry when we stumble and hurt ourselves, not to present ourselves badly that might embarrass our parents or something when they take us out visiting with their friends and stuff. Lots of times we are brought up to be, you know, not seen and not even heard. Like pretend you don't even exist. And if you exist, you're getting on my last nerve, even if it's the first nerve that you're interacting with during the course of the day. But we kind of learn these ways of being in front of others, around others. And like I said, we really don't really get a good feel of the people that we surround ourselves until we actually surround ourselves with them, when we are immersed in them and we just, right? Even if we're not saying anything, we're just being a spectator, right? We're being a student, that we can actually feel people out. And for the most part of my life, I've had to feel the people out, especially within my own family. You guys have hung out with me for any length of time. I come from a very dynamic family with all different personalities. I don't know how long it's been going on, for generations and generations for sure, because I knew my grandparents and my aunt and uncles, that I noticed a lot of the way of being, the way of living, the way of expressing is very similar to, my grandparents and, right, aunts and uncles. And so epigenetically, I know it goes back at least a few generations. My generation, my father's generation, and his father's generation. And the same thing going on my mother's side, but totally different. And then when you have these two differents come together, right? And because we interact with both these two differents, what happens? We become different too. Oh, happy St. Patrick's Day. Is that today? And everybody else in the United States today. Oh, St. Patrick's Day today. Oh, amazing. Right? I didn't know. One day just kind of blends into the next. When I was younger, it was always a day for celebration where all our friends would get together and wear our green hats and ties and socks, and we'd go to the bars or the nightclubs, and we just, right, just an excuse to have a party, to have a good time, for celebration, right? It is. And it doesn't mean because we're off running at the bars, it's not like we are doing it all the time, though some people do, you know, but when we're looking for an excuse to get together with our friends. But then again, we're supposed to, right? That's how we get a good feel to who our friends are. Even in some of those group of friends that I had, those groups of friends weren't all my friends, right? I had my friends, but then they had their friends too join in that crew. And you have to feel them out. You have to experience them to decide for yourself, right? Whether they're going to be a friend for you. I've never been that person to say, hey, if that's going to be your friend, right? You have to choose between them or me. I've never been that person. I've always judged everybody individually, right? Individually by how they treat me. And a lot of that was so that I could, right, learn how to move within different people, different personalities, right? Different personality disorders, right? Because everybody has got issues. And for the most part, it worked for me and I got along, right? Obviously, if I didn't care for someone, I wouldn't be spending a lot of time with them. But in social settings, you're not going to say, get away from me, right? Like, right? You're social, you're polite, you're courteous in that. But everybody has a sense about whether or not somebody likes them or they don't like them. Sometimes it's not even a matter of either. Sometimes it's just a little bit of indifference, right? Right? Or polite avoidance, right? Polite avoidance. And I think that for me, that was the most part. But when we're talking about how we present ourselves out there to the world, right? It's not that we're being somebody that we're not. We're using those skills. You can call them skills because this is the way that we were brought up. These were kind of social cues that we were taught as kids. And then we bring them into our teen years and our young adult years. And right. And for myself, I didn't even recognize that those weren't truly, um, um, truly, I was going to say pieces of me, but it's not pieces of me because I thought it was wholly me, like not wholly me, but like all of me, like the true me. But I'm just even just talking about it right now and thinking about, my customer service in the last job that I had. A lot of it was just in pleasant courtesies, greeting them when they walk in, asking how they enjoyed their experience, complimenting on the items that they chose. But then there were others in getting to know them, right? In being that spectator and in being that student and feeling them out and getting to like them, that they actually truly did become friends. But you can't treat everybody the same. That could get us in a whole lot of mess, couldn't it? It could get, I'm just going to have a sip of my grapefruit juice here. Mm, I love grapefruit juice. It's my second bottle in the past week of the grapefruit juice. I've been really craving fruit lately, and I've been indulging a little bit in those things that I would normally say no to because, right, like when you go to buy grapes and they're like $7.99 a pound, and I just like, oh my goodness, I think I'll pass on the grapes, right? And then you kind of treat yourself when you have a few extra dollars. So I have been appreciating the fruit. And when we crave things, we actually do need them. I believe that when your body says, "Oh, I need some sugar." right? Sometimes that is the bad bacteria screaming at you because they want the pink ice donuts with the sprinkles. But lots of times, when your body is screaming, I need a little bit of sugar, it's because, your blood sugars are really, really low. Maybe I needed some vitamin C, so my body was screaming, I need some fruit and I need some fruit juice. Lots of times this week, actually, I was thinking about proteins, how I haven't been eating enough proteins. Well, I guess I have been eating enough proteins, but my proteins have been pretty consistently as eggs, right? I'm surprised I didn't turn into an egg myself. So I really splurged and bought all kinds of meats and stuff, and I portioned them all, and I filled up my freezer so that I would have proteins for the very least the next month. But I believe too, your body is screaming for these nutrients, and we have to feel ourselves out. We have to feel out everything. Isn't that something when you actually look at it that we're always feeling? And feelings are important. It's a very human trait, and that's something that this age of AI learning, right? This digital age will never be able to one up on us. I don't think that will ever be able to happen, right? Maybe in that hybrid kind of, right? Bionic man, $1 million man and bionic woman, right? Maybe in that idea when we become synthesized with technology ourselves, maybe it's a possibility, but I don't think so. I think it's very specifically a human thing. And when I said that, I'm going to actually say maybe not truly just a human thing because our pets, right? Our cats and our dogs and our gerbils and our lizards and our snakes, like we domesticate them and they become domesticated, don't they? Right? They love us. And we have actually trained animals that should be wild, right? They're part of the wild kingdom, but we have domesticated them. They say actually that the friendships with dogs actually came from the Neolithic area or Neolithic era when they were scavenging for food. So they would follow the hunters when they would go on their hunts, and because they were starving they couldn't wait to get at the meat. So as the Neanderthals or the early humans were cleaning the bison or the mammoths or whatever, that these animals would just get really, really close, and humans being curious, right? We interacted with them till eventually we thought, oh, they're useful, right? Like we did with the horse, right? And we tamed the horse. I think it was the Mongolians that actually domesticated horses and introduced them to the rest of the world. Now, when you come to the United States, especially Canada, I don't think we have wild horses here in Canada, but in the United States, there are lots of wild horses, but originally they weren't wild. They were brought over. Was it the Spaniards that brought them over? I'm not quite sure if the Spaniards brought them over or the Europeans brought them over, but they eventually did get domesticated, and they love us too, but they're dependent on us now too. So if well, I was going to say it makes me wonder if something happened to mankind, how well they would adjust to the world that they live in without the care of the humans. But I think they would do quite well, right? Cats love to chase mice around. And we know what happened in Chernobyl during that nuclear plant that went off, that they had to leave all the animals behind, and they're like on their 12th generation of of dogs, and they've now totally amalgamated into their wildness, right? They still hang out in the cities, but even the cities are overrun with forests. Oh my goodness, we're just kind of like all over today, aren't we? Um, I love my different juices too, Cindy. You do, eh? I had a really good one the other day. It was um, ocean spray cranberry grape. Oh my goodness. And I've been looking for it on the shelf and I can't find it. They were just little bottles too. And I looked all over the place in a couple of stores and I couldn't find them again. So I went with the grapefruit juice and I've been really, really enjoying the grapefruit juice. I ate a lot of grapefruit when I was a kid and kind of got turned off of it a little bit as an adult. It was a diet food, when I was a kid. So, when everybody was having the pink ice donuts with the sprinkles, Cindy was having a grapefruit, right? And for me, I felt that as punishment. And it's why I have such a difficult time uh, giving up on the treats because the treats were, well, reward and punishment, weren't they? Because I would be rewarded with them when I had money and I could run off to the store for ice cream and pop or potato chips, right? And I always had money as kids. We were taught to earn money, whether it was Kool-Aid stands or babysitting. It was Christmas caroling. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we were pretty creative in making money. And even as little small kids, our parents got amazing, amazing Christmas presents and birthday presents from their little kids, which is not very common, right? But we were taught, right, that if we wanted something, we had to earn it. My dad was very generous with money. He was a poker player and he drove cabs, so he always had lots of tip money and stuff. So if he had a fat wallet, we were always getting money. My father was very generous that way. But at the same time, that wasn't happening all the time. And when you get used to the treat and when you feel like you've just been punished too long, you've had just too many grapefruits, too many bowls of wheat germ. Hate lots of wheat germ too. Um, and being on those diets, it just felt like punishment to a little kid, right? I sympathize with that child that I was because food was used as punishment and as reward, right? And even to this day, I use it. When I've had a hard day or a rough day, then, right, then I treat myself and it makes me feel better. When I'm sitting here and I'm taking in lessons and right, I'm listening to some really heavy, right, very analytical professors and teachers out there. And it's so easier for me to pay attention and to hold that information if I'm able to do that by sitting here and eating toast or potato chips or whatever, right? But I am a lot better than I was when I was a teenager and a young adult. And, I wish that I had been able to maintain my weight in school because, I recognize now my own worst enemy. I would always be that victim as to why people were treating me bad at school and why people didn't want to hang out with me and why I was considered a nerd, right? Why I was considered uh right, somebody who didn't really matter, didn't have anything to offer. But that was my own insecurities, and we all choose our poisons, don't we? and poisons to me were the treats, right? The things that I would run off and buy and hide under my mattress and just reward myself when I felt I was being punished, when I was put on a diet or I wasn't allowed to have second helpings, or when it was pointed it out to me, how I was eating too much. And this was how I calmed my system. As an adult, well, I learned other ways to calm my system, right? I chewed ice, I smoked cigarettes. Oh my goodness, I did cough drops. I would immerse myself in different things and I would switch them out when I thought I was getting too deep into them, when they became too compulsive for me. And then I'd say, okay, time for something else. And then sometimes it would be the diet. I would put myself on that diet for as long as I could, right? And I did succeed, probably, oh my goodness, up and down in weight my entire life. I would have to say I was able to get down to normal weight at least a half a dozen times in my lifetime, and then to just shoot right up to gain 50, 75. Right? I think I even gained, no, I think my biggest gain was maybe 75 pounds after my initial, right? I did get to 311 pounds. I think I was 27 years old, and at that point it was too much. I wanted to have the life that all my friends were having, and I wanted boyfriends, and I wanted to get married and have kids, and that opportunity came across my path, and I did it. I lost 160 pounds. It took me a year, and I was pretty dedicated to that, but I looked at it as a reward the entire time. Every pound I lost, it was a reward. I didn't think of it at all as a punishment, right? And there were lots of times when I could have thought that, because I even had to, my friends were going off to the bar and partying. I couldn't even have a drink, right? I just cut the cut the calories right down to a minimal of what I needed, and then I became a little bit of an exercise freak. I did not heavy exercise. I've never done the heavy exercise like weights or running. um, I always did low impact exercise. For me, it was bike riding and walking and swimming and my hiking. But other than that, I didn't do too much of the really hard things. Like, I didn't do any of it. For myself, I would think I was more worried about getting stretch marks and stuff. That's why I've stayed away from the high impact exercise, because I saw what it did to my friends' arms and stuff, and I didn't want any of that. And I'm grateful that, that I didn't get a lot of stretch marks. As especially when I got so high in my weight. I can't believe just even thinking about 311 pounds. I don't know a lot of people who got that high in weight, and it caused me a lot of difficulties. But like I said, we all choose our poisons and what we do to calm our systems. And those pink ice don't, I always use it as an example. Those pink ice donuts with the sprinkles that I had, it could have very easily have been alcohol, right? My grandfather was an alcoholic. I didn't My dad drank, and I didn't know that until after he passed away. My entire life I had no idea that my dad drank, but it could have been that. As I became an adult, right? In the 80s it was like cocaine, and now, oh, and then the early 2000s it was heroin, and then now we got that, what's that called, where the one where people all bend over and they're like zombies, the horse tranquilizer one. I can't remember what it's called. Hello, Eugene. Hello, Eugene. Fentanyl. That's what it's called. Fentanyl. And so I'm grateful. Like I said, we all have um our poison of choice, and there's no judgment, because in the end, I think anything that you have as a something that's specifically used for calming the system, it saved your life, right? I considered the pink ice donuts saving my life, because it's how we coped with our lives, right? And so I never judge in that, except to say that I am grateful that my coping mechanism for the main part was food, only because I was able to keep my mentality, right? Because when you do those other things like alcohol, your real personality, your real fears come out, and then you lay that out on everybody around you. When you're using the heavy drugs, well, you're just basically disappearing completely, right? And for myself, I really truly believe that, people get involved in those really bad ones because their souls are trying to come to the surface. They're trying to help, and they come to the surface, and right, the whole world is like crazy town, that the only thing that they can do immediately is to crash and find a way to cope with what they're experiencing, or what they experienced in the past, because we drag the past right into the future. And some people, like my grandfather, his entire life, he when my grandfather passed away, he was still an alcoholic, right? His entire life. Now he quit numerous times, right? For well over a year, just in the time that I knew him, at least once a year he would try to quit drinking. And he when he didn't drink, he was a super nice man, responsible, kind, hardworking. But when my grandfather fell, he fell, right? And we all suffered for that. We all suffered for that. So it makes sense to me that my father didn't want his kids knowing that he drank. And because he did that, because my father hid that from his kids, um, none of his kids drink. Like none of us do. I'm right. And I used to go to bars and nightclubs. In fact, I worked in bars and nightclubs, and still alcohol was not my drug of choice. I would take a pink ice donuts with sprinkles. Oh, I didn't even mention the gambling, which was the worst coping mechanism I could have ever had. Oh my goodness, that took me away. I was focused on the machine. It made me a liar and a sneaky person, because, I was juggling the bills in the household, and I was trying to explain to my husband anything except that I had gambled the bill money away and stuff. So I became a real liar in that. And that is not part of who I am. It was something that really I was put off by, because, well, my sister and my mother were big liars, right? Silly, over silly things. You just knew that they were lying, right? I can't lie at all, because I am just, you could just see it on my face. And, my husband, he would never question it, but I knew he knew I was lying to him when I'd come home from work, and he'd go, well, where's the money? And I'd say, oh, I put it in the gas tank, or I had to pay this bill, and right, I had to buy groceries. And the poor man, right, he was living on Kraft dinner and scrambled eggs, right? Because I was even spending the grocery money. I was more creative than that. I was just using that as an example, but I was using myself as an example as that. And yeah, that was the worst one, was the gambling for me. And at that time, I my eating habits and my gambling habits were both set in place to calm my system down, but they were feeding each other, right? If I had a bad day gambling, I would be eating donuts out the yin yang, right? And when I was eating donuts out the yin yang, I feel so terrible for myself that I didn't want to be around people, but I still wanted to be around people, but I didn't, if that makes any sense. So I would go sit at a machine in a club or in a bar or at the casino, and I would play slot machines, and I would feel like I was being sociable, but I wasn't even talking to anybody. I was just totally focused on the gambling machines, right? But I am not judging myself on that. I recognize my problems, right? I recognize how I coped with my issues, and I had a lot of emotional issues growing up. And I'm going to say I'm very, very grateful, right? Very grateful because I made it to be right here, right now, with a genuine smile on my face, right? And more importantly, a real understanding as to what happened. And in being able to do that, I feel so much better that I've been able, right? I don't gamble anymore. I haven't put $1, not even a lottery ticket, not even I bet you, right? Not even that. And that is something to be, right? To be proud of. I would have been prouder if I'd never even touched a gambling machine to start with, but it is what it is. But I knew that that's what was saving my life, right? That's what made life bearable for me. And like I said, we all pick our poisons, don't we? But I'm grateful for my poisons because at the very least, I was able to keep my mentality to the point where I could make some good choices for myself. And each one of us get to make those choices. Nobody else can make those choices for ourselves, right? Nobody can. Everybody has best intent for us, right? My parents probably had their best intent for me to put me on those diets because they thought I was a little chubby kid and they didn't want me to turn out like my aunts and my uncles, my grandparents, because obesity was something that ran on both sides of the family, like serious obesity. I had two uncles, both of them were over 500 pounds, right? My grandmother had a heart attack and she was over 500 pounds. So they were worried, right? When they see their kid getting a little chubby, okay, let's get Cindy on a diet, right? And for me as a kid, I'm looking at that as punishment when in reality, as an adult, putting myself back there, it was worry for my well being. But at that time, right, I picked my poison as a kid, right? I didn't have much choices. I'm not going on heroin or becoming an alcoholic at 10 years old, right? But it's easy to go to the corner store and get a chocolate bar and a bottle of pop, isn't it? Right? So we learn to cope in different ways. And I also like to take off. I was always outdoors. I'd go to the beach and I'd go to the park and I would be anywhere except at home, right? And that helped me to get through my childhood too, right? So I'm going to say I'm very grateful for my lifesavers because they were my lifesavers, even though, right? It quite possibly could have been a different story if I hadn't made those choices and saying, okay, we got to do something. It's kind of ridiculous, right? I've got to do something about this. Let's give it another shot. And when I failed, I always failed. When I failed, I'd give it another shot. I never gave up. I always tried till eventually, right? Right? little bit too late, right? My marriage had fallen apart. I lost my good paying jobs, and I coped in other ways, but just being able to get rid of the gambling, that was everything. And that has been only 6 years. I was gambling for over 20 years. I was thousands of dollars every week, you guys. I spent a lot of money on those things. Okay, you guys, let's come into the comments for 1 minute and then we'll pull a card. I had 3 different people tell me that I am their calming mechanism and coping tool. They want to hang out with me, or they call and text me and ask me to please go to their house for help, right? We are lights, but the thing is, sometimes we give all that light to other people that we don't have any light for ourselves, right? And I come from a very dynamic family. And as much as you were a caregiver, right, for your family, I did the same thing for my family, but I broke loose for that because I didn't have that froth coming over the mug to give away. I was giving it away in an empty mug. I was totally empty, and I was feeding myself on those coping mechanisms. But that's absolutely beautiful, right? And as long as you left some for yourself, that you were able to bring joy into your own life, that it didn't feel like a chore, that you wanted to do that. I think that's absolutely beautiful, Tammy. These people vent to me, and I am the sounding board, or they want me to help them to do something with them to help them feel better, or right, exactly what I was saying, or calm down or feel encouraged, etc. Yeah, and that drains us. That totally drains us. And we don't have anything for ourselves. And what do? We go to the pink ice donuts. We go to the VLTs. We go to the heroin and the cocaine and the fentanyl and right. And like me, the crunching of the ice and the halls. And thank goodness I came off of those too. And I spent a fortune in keeping my teeth good, right? And if I hadn't had that Demon blocked, for sure I would have had diabetes, the way I was chowing down those cough drops, because they're just pure sugar. I got hooked on the eucalyptus of the cough drops. My mother had that addiction too. At those days, I don't know if they still have this candy. Hers was beech tree cough drops, but she ate them constantly. But I did it all through my marriage. I just smelled like a medicine cabinet to my husband. I don't know why we didn't break up sooner. Oh my goodness. Right. But I'm grateful that I'm getting insights, and I'm sitting in on conversations, and I've got a few lessons and a few tools along my belt that in my own baby steps I have been able to overcome, and I have been able to build a life for myself. And lots of people would say, but Cindy, your whole life, you wasted your whole life. No, I didn't. Right? I had lots of amazing, amazing experiences and adventures, and people that I cared for come in and out of my life. Like, I have no regrets in any of that. And there's still that opportunity to create something amazing, right? And what that is, we just keep putting one foot in front of another, don't we? And just experience what there is to experience and enjoy the life that we have in this moment. I'm not even close to being done yet, you guys. Not even close. I've got at least 50 years left, right? I'm aiming for 114 years old, you guys. That's what the goal. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen. But if I'm aiming for 114, if I have that mindset, I've got 50 years left, you guys, right? It's going to be amazing. 50 years. That's how long I've been living, just over, right? So it's like half my life still to enjoy. Okay, you guys, let's just get into a card here. Okay. Perception, you guys. We got the word perception. Perception is the learning process to a perspective. Remember what we were talking about yesterday about being willing, right? That there's so many ideas, and we live in this digital age, this age of AI learning where we're so close to each other. And because we never left the same village, the same city, the same neighborhood, we grew up in our family, and our family are friends, and we get together that, you know, we've grown up with a mindset already set in place. We never really got to experience the way that we wanted to experience our own lives, to create beliefs and understandings for ourselves. We just followed suit with what our parents did, right? If they were Buddhist, we were Buddhist. If they were Christians, we were Christians, right? And not to be able to understand that we could just sit down and just listen and sit in conversations with people that are different from us. But sometimes because we already have these ideas planted in us, grounded in us, like we're not going to budge in that, that's who we are. Those are perspectives because that's what you believe. The perception is the learning process to the perspective. So, in being willing, right, being willing to sit in and just have a conversation with somebody or let somebody else talk, and you go, wow, I never even thought of it that way. We grow up da 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 da, right? I never even thought that that was a possibility. And the next thing you know, you believe in something different, right? You believe in something different. And if you already had that perspective in place, if you were already grounded in that knowing for yourself, you wouldn't be willing to even listen into a different idea, right? A different perspective of somebody else who is actually, right, experienced it or had their whole life revolve around an experience that everything else in his life could be totally off, right? Could be totally wrong, but this one thing, right, that he understood to be true. And then when you heard it, you felt it and you understood it and you knew it to be true yourself. That doesn't mean you have to believe everything, right? It was like my dad used to say, if somebody told you to jump off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge? No, right? You would study it. You would look to see if it was possible. If you jumped off the bridge, is it like 6 feet to the water? Is there any rocks down there? Can you swim? Right? So you just don't do things. You just don't believe things, even if it's even within your own family, right? If it doesn't feel true for you. And sometimes you grow up and you feel that it's true for you, but you never had an opportunity to sit in a different perspective, right? And so if you are willing, if you're able to sit in and listen to somebody and be open to a new idea, right? That's how we're going to better get along with each other. That's really how we're going to learn to better get along with each other. One day it'll just be one one set of ideas for all of us because we're this close now. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting pretty close. And so in the moment, we do have all these different political ideas, all these different religious ideas, all these different cultural ideas and familial, right? Right within our own family ideas. And those are the ones usually that we believe the most, right? Because honor thy mother and thy father. That's what we were taught, right? Okay, you guys. Perception is the learning process to a perspective, right? The perception is not a perspective. The perception is something that you believe in the moment. But if you leave yourself open, you might really leave yourself open for the actual truth. And that's the truth. And that's how I move forward, right? Lots of ideas that I have, they still hold true to me from being as a little kid. I still believe in them. But there are lots of things, so many things that were misguided in good intention or bad intention. I picked them up no matter what. And I'm so grateful that I'm willing to be course corrected, that I'm willing in my non-judgmental way to sit in and listen to somebody else's idea and judge for myself, right? And I got to think that that's pretty amazing, because that's not something everybody can do. I think you are doing great. Aw, I like that. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. Nice perception. It was. It's a great word. I have a lot of great words here. 54 powerful words, and each word is powerful, right? And each word we can look at in a different perspective or different perception. And I do often. I pick up that card next time and I'll express it in a different way, in a different experience or a different conversation, something that came across my path or something that's happening right in that moment. Yeah, great. Okay, you guys. That's going to be my good cheer. I'll come back and listen to it myself. I've been all over the place tonight, but that's okay. I've been all over the place all day anyway, right? And we're all entitled to have those days. Tomorrow for sure, I'll stay home and relax. Okay, you guys, have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.